G'day, I'm Scott Gibbons. I'm here with Barnaby Howarth. Creating good culture in any organisation is like the little girl going for a walk along the beach with her grandfather when a bunch of starfish wash up on the sand. Her grandfather bends down and picks up a single starfish and throws it back in the ocean. And when she asks him why he did that, he says, that was the only one. There are hundreds of them. Throwing one back won't matter. But he says to her, it mattered for that one. And that's important. So this episode of Everyday Greatness is for everybody who feels like they're one of the hundreds of starfish that don't get thrown back, the ones who sit at their desk, do a really good job, don't suck up or complain, but feel like they're never recognised. And we'll be speaking to some people who appreciate that good culture is made from an accumulation of good individuals across an entire organisation, no matter what role they play. We'll speak to the Chief Operating Officer of Tyrrell's Wines, Chris Tyrrell, and host of Culture of Leadership podcast, Brendan Rogers. But on today's episode, we're going to speak to Paul Roos, former player and coach of the Sydney Swans, who helped create the Bloods culture that has driven the Swans to unprecedented success on and off the field since it was implemented in 2003. Paul Roos played in the AFL for 17 seasons and then coached for 11. So he's witnessed all sorts of individuals that make up the cultures of football. And over his time in sport, he now uses those lessons in his business, Performance by Design, which helps create good culture in business to find success. And one of Roos's sayings about culture is that people need to focus on behaviours, not outcomes. He believes it's the accumulation of individual attitudes that make up a successful culture. So for every person who feels like they're an invisible in their own organisation, Paul Roos, coming to us live from his home in Hollywood, is here to tell you otherwise. Hey, Paul Roos, welcome. So good to have you on board. This is just terrific. I was really miffed, absolutely miffed with Barnaby when he said we're interviewing you, but it's on screen. We didn't get to come to Honolulu and join you there.
Well, you're always welcome. There's no question. Barnaby,
all right, I'll see you tomorrow, mate. Come on next year and buy the ticket.
Yeah. Now, that's what we should be doing, Barnes. We should be on the road. Take the show on the road. So what's happening with the surf over there? Is it good?
We actually went out there last night and had a look up at Diamond Head. I'm not a big surfer because obviously that wasn't my forte as a young kid. I used to go down to Wilson's Prom and I pulled out the surf mat and then I had the knee board and then obviously I started playing AFL football sort of thing. But, I mean, you realise the massive culture in Hawaii. You know, everyone does some sort of watercraft. So we've got to stand up a couple of surfboards and I get out there occasionally. Now, I must say too, can I just clarify? I don't normally wear my Swans 2005 premiership hat around everywhere. So I was asked, just so everyone said, I know you're taking a couple of snapshots and maybe you go on Instagram, but just so everyone sees this, it's not something I walk around Waikiki with. It's at the request of Barnaby. He said, can you wear something Sydney? I'm proud to wear it, but I just don't normally have this on. So I just want to make that clear.
So what's the story with AFL over there? Are they into it? Is it growing? Is it got some things happening, or is it just forgotten because of the American League?
Well, interesting enough, when I came over, I retired in 1998, and in 99 I got a phone call from a guy called Paul O'Keefe who ran the United States Australian Football League. And my first coaching gig, it was actually coaching America versus Canada in Chicago in Australian rules football. So I've had a long history of association with the United States Australian Football League. They have a national championship every year. Mason Cox, I think, came over last year. I think Nick Rewald's been here with his connection with AFL, often sends umpires. You know, it's not a huge sport, but a lot of Aussies over here trying to build it. And I think it's on Pacific Sports Network. You can occasionally get it. Yeah, but given the size and the strength of the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball and hockey, they pretty much dominate the landscape, as well as the international sports, of course.
Yeah. So as an AFL footballer, did you feel any responsibility to help shape your club's culture as an individual?
Well, there's probably two components of it. When I played and first went down to Fitzroy, I didn't really know much about culture. You know, when you're a young player, you just go down, you try and hang on as long as you possibly can, and really you're trying to fit in. And if you're talking about culture, it's a really good way to audit your culture. Ask the newest person in the organisation what 3 words they would use to describe the culture. Because typically when you get to an organisation, whether it's Fitzroy Footy Club, Sydney Swans, or a corporate, you are trying to fit in. What's normal? What do people wear to work? What times they turn up to meetings? Do they send emails back straight away? And in the footy club sense, I was incredibly fortunate to go to Fitzroy, and they had really good role model leaders: Gary Wilson, Bernie Quinlan, Mickey Conlon, and then the next generation of Matty Rendell, Scotty Clayton, etc. And they just had really good actions and behaviours. I probably didn't realise how simple culture was until I started going through my football career and just looking around and saying, well, really good role models have really good behaviours, and then you become a really good organisation. And then once I became coach of the Sydney Swans, absolutely. I had a great responsibility to the board, to the members, to the CEO, to the sponsors, to define what our culture was. And you've already articulated, we came up with the Bloods culture, and Johnny Longmire's done a fantastic job of picking that up. After I left, and Johnny and he was an assistant coach to me when we went down to Coffs Harbour and defined what that culture was anyway. But they've had a long history of a really strong brand and a really strong culture.
I got to say, as a legacy that you've left here, the culture that is, when Barnaby and I arrived yesterday, and we've been here now for 2 days, everybody is a 10 or more. There's nobody that is less than a 10. It's just phenomenal. Even the cleaning of the kitchen, everybody's aware to make sure that kitchen is clean, their benches are clean, their desks are clean. Everything's just sparkling. And there's a lovely attitude from all of them. So well done you. So can individuals get away with bad behaviour if the organisation they're part of has a good culture that they can hide behind?
Well, certainly. Yeah, it's certainly a lot harder if the organisation has a good culture, because part of having a good culture is a clearly defined set of values, purpose and behaviours. And then a system in place that allows people to act their way in or act their way out. So in a really good culture, you have a decision to make. If you're a poor performer, you have poor behaviours, your decision is, do I want to change my behaviours or do I want to leave the organisation? And often you leave the organisation because you don't fit in. And you don't fit in because you're looking around and going, oh, well, I wish everyone else turned up late to meetings like I do. And then you've got no one really to complain to about the meeting starting on time and you being late all the time. So that's a really good culture. And a poor culture, you can get away with anything, to be honest. I see that regularly. Because no one really defines what the culture is. No one holds anyone accountable, and no one has really honest and open conversations to make that individual better. And the only reason we have honest and open conversations is to make us better as individuals and collectively to make us better as an organisation.
So just stepping forward now, what is performance by design? Tell me what that is.
So performance by design really comes off the back of my work in sport, and Gerard Murphy and a couple of our directors who've been involved in both business and sport. And it really is systemising culture. We talk about taking the chance out of culture. How do we take the chance out of culture? And really, when I went to Sydney, that's what it was all about. We can leave culture to chance. And fundamentally, as a company, we can get people together, and most times people are really good people, and we'll have a reasonably good culture. But we can also systemise culture, and that's what we do at Performance by Design. We help people really clarify what they stand for. We do a lot of profiling, which allows people to understand their strengths and weaknesses and how we interact together. We build really strong relationships. We have a relationship building exercise. Then we teach people to have what we call real talk, open and honest conversations. And then through that original process, we then systemise, their meeting cadence, our reviews. We come back, and then over time, we see an enormous improvement in their behaviours and in their culture.
And where are you doing this, internationally?
So we have an office in Australia, we have an office in USA, and we have an office in Canada. So, we're really fortunate to be a global-based company now, and really enjoying my time. As you said, I live in Hawaii now. My wife's originally from California, so I spent 30-odd years in Australia, and I'm fortunate now to have a good group of colleagues that understand my life's changed now. We're now committed to living in America for some time, and we're now committed to bringing performance by design. One of my other business partners in Canada done a great job in having a really sustainable business up there, and obviously Australia's going well also. So yeah, it's exciting times for us as an organisation.
So what's a day for you today? Like, except for today, because you're talking to us, but what's a normal business day for you?
Well, yesterday I gave a keynote address to one of our clients in Sydney. So that, with the Zoom world now, which probably came out as a result of what's happened over the last 3 years, most people are happy to do some sort of meetings or did a keynote there. A number of meetings before I got on this call today with my colleagues in Canada and Australia. And then a lot of business development meetings with some businesses in Australia, Canada, and the United States.
Gee, you must be spinning around the clock with the different time zones that you've got to run in.
Yeah, well, Hawaii's not bad. Hawaii to Australia is a really good time zone, so that's actually pretty good. But once you start moving further east, obviously to Canada, New York, places like that, it stretches the day out a fair bit. So we're obviously really mindful of that when you've got a global company.
Yeah. And so the corporations that you're dealing with, are you? Where's your status with them? Are you the figurehead? Are you the chief speaker? What are you? What's your role?
Yeah, sort of really the brand ambassador. So I'm responsible for getting clients on board through LinkedIn and through my profile and through people I know, through connections, et cetera. And then typically I deliver a keynote at the start of most of our workshops because as you guys know, everyone loves sport, whether they understand it or not, they really love the connection. And as we've got into this full-time sporting environment, which really happened probably in the middle 90s, there's so many correlations between sport and business. So I sort of set up the scene, talk about the Bloods culture, talk about Melbourne, the pros and cons of the things we went through at Melbourne, the system we put in place there, and really set the scene for what they're about to do with the facilitators that we have in those countries.
Yeah. And your 2005 premiership, where does that sit in the levels of greatness that you've achieved in your career? Yeah,
it was incredible from a sporting point of view. Obviously, as we all know, as it sort of crept up, the 65 years became 66 and 67, and then by the time we got to 2005, it was 72 years. So everyone was aware of the time it took to build a sustainable culture. And, we started in midway through 2002, 2003. But, look, it was many, many years of hard work. So, winning the premiership, walking on the ground, seeing the past players like Barry Round, Dennis Carroll, Paul Kelly gave me the cup. And then, obviously, a lot of the people that have put money in through the really tough times, it was fantastic. To see, the next day at the Lakeside Oval, the Swans, South Melbourne fans, and then to go back to Sydney and do a parade through Sydney was just incredible. So, it was an amazing experience. And to this day, I mean, people still talk about it. I still get tapped on the shoulder or, an email every now and then, or stopped in the streets and said, "Oh, Roosie, thanks very much. I took my mum, took my dad to the grand final. They passed away a year later or 2 years later. They really remember it." So, it's sort of surpassed all expectations, really. And I guess because the amount of time it took to get there and to hold the cup up was really exciting.
Yeah, you made a difference. I thank you. Barnaby wants to thank you as well. Barnaby's got a whole heap of questions for you. I'll flick you over to Barnaby.
I thank you, Roosie, and welcome, and thank you for wearing your cap. It's very cool. Now, non-AFL fans will have no idea why I think this is awesome, but you can rest assured it is. Paul Roos, can I ask you to repeat after me, please? To the people who've been waiting 72 years for Paul Roos to do his own promo for his interview on Everyday Greatness, here it is.
Well, Paul, we've got to remember that. For those who've been waiting 72 years for Paul Roos to do his own promo for Everyday Greatness, here it is.
That was the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roosie. Now, can I ask you about your business? You host a show called The Culture Couch. Do you ever see guests on there who give you ideas about culture that they've implemented in their business and you think, far out, that was a good idea. Maybe I should do that in my business?
Well, it's really interesting now, mate. It's funny having turned 60 and been involved in football and obviously the business we started 5 years ago. I think the great thing about it is whenever you get a great leader on or someone that really understands culture, there's so many similarities. So it's almost the opposite, where I get off the calls and I go, that's fantastic, because that's exactly the way I see the world.
Yeah.
And I'm probably a little bit more stubborn now in terms of how you have to do it. You know, I'm really set in my ways. If you want to have a great culture, you have to do it a certain way. If you just want to have a talent-based organisation, and I said this to the group of people I spoke to yesterday, you can still win a premiership with a talent-based organisation. Yeah, absolutely. But if you want to have a behavioural-based system, whether that's in the corporate world or in the sporting world, you have to do it a certain way. And it's great when I speak to really good leaders that they all have really similar views around how things should be done.
Yeah. I have to go back a step and ask you another footy question, which I forgot to ask you. When you were coaching Melbourne, when Melbourne played against the Swans, if the Swans kicked a goal or did something good, did you secretly pump your fist under the desk, or were you too professional for that?
No, it's interesting. I'll answer it differently. Someone said to me not that long ago, and people ask me, who do you barrack for? And Barnaby, you would know this. When you're in a football club, you are so fully invested in that football club. It's just a different level of being a supporter.
Yeah.
So when you go from Sydney to Melbourne, you know, you are so heavily invested in the Melbourne Football Club that what you've done at Sydney is somewhat irrelevant, other than the fact that, that's why they're employing you. They're employing you because of what you've done at Sydney and et cetera, et cetera. But the moment you walk into another football club, the moment you walk into Melbourne Football Club, you are so heavily invested. It is, and now that's when people ask me, who do you barrack for? I don't really barrack for anyone, because you've had this unbelievable level of investment at Fitzroy, at Sydney, at Melbourne, and I did some work with North Melbourne Footy Club a couple of years ago. And it's just such a different level of investment. And I don't think supporters fully understand that. And that's probably one of the biggest frustrations. I understand when teams lose that supporters get really frustrated. There is no, and I'll say this, there is no more invested people in your football club than the 22 players that walked off the field in defeat, and the coaching staff and medical staff and fitness staff and everyone involved in the club. There is no one in Australia that's more invested in that loss than you are as a supporter. So always remember that as a supporter. No one goes out to lose. We know that, Barnaby. As bad as the Swans were at some point, as bad as the Melbourne was when I first took over, not one of those players, I think, was it Sydney went through a 23 or 24 game losing streak. Not one of those players were trying to lose games. I played at Fitzroy my second last year, or my last year, I think it was. We were 0-10 at one stage. Not one of my teammates deliberately went out to lose. Yeah. But it is hard when you're watching the game and you're seeing some of the mistakes. And so when you're at a club, you're 100% fully invested in that football club.
That was very diplomatically answered. Thanks, Roosie. Let's get back to business. You work alongside your wife, Tammy, at the Nurture Group. Tell us a bit about what they do.
Yeah, it was really exciting to get that back up and going this year. We had a Nurture Group retreat, which we're really trying to combine business and wellness now. It's really small, medium businesses. It's really trying to upskill them in some of the things we're talking about today. But also, you have to be able to look after yourself. I mean, one of the things I'm really talking to leaders about is you're being asked to turn up the best version of you. What does that look like? Make sure you don't forget to look after yourself. So we got back there again about a month or so ago, and it was awesome to get to Fiji. We had a combined New Zealand Australian retreat, 150 people, and they just absolutely loved it. Some amazing speakers we got there, and the message is always sort of again similar. The message around strategy, but also the message around health and well-being and looking after yourself. So that's been really exciting to get involved with 4 other business partners, 2 out of New Zealand, Sip and Zach, and Libby and Justin out of Sydney. And we really enjoyed seeing each other again. We had a hiatus for about 3 years with COVID, but it was great to get back, and you could see the need for the connection, the need for the education, and the need for people to get back with like-minded people to get their businesses going and just be re-energised after a really difficult period.
Yeah. So you and Tammy are both pretty heavily involved in the Nurture Group in different arms of it. What's the culture like in your household working so close to your wife?
Well, it's been amazing. I mean, Tammy's been a really big part of what I've done, both from a footy point of view and a business point of view. We introduced meditation at Sydney back in end of 2002, 2003, which was groundbreaking at that stage. It's a lot more prevalent now in sport. But, we didn't make it compulsory, but it was no coincidence that some of our best players, Jude Bolton and Adam Goods and Craig Bolton and Brett Kirk, they were the ones that took up that opportunity. And then, so we did that when I was coaching Sydney, and then when I went to Melbourne, we made it compulsory. Again, now it's more mainstream in football clubs, but she was really a pioneer in bringing that mindfulness and focus and awareness. We did some visualisation before every game, I think in my last season at Melbourne, which had a huge benefit. So, look, and we meditate every day. We exercise together most days, which is really cool. And we live a really well-balanced lifestyle in Hawaii, as you can imagine.
I can imagine. I can just imagine what it looks like behind the camera at the moment. Roosie, the culture in this media room at the Swans headquarters is sensational right now, and one of the reasons is because of my co-host, Scott Gibbons. So I'm going to throw you back to Scott for a few more questions.
Yeah. Roosie, what's the best excuse you've heard for someone being late? When you're talking about culture and people have got to be on time, there must be some creative excuses that have come along.
The thing is, Scott, is most people don't even apologise. I think it's a really... I always say this, you can give your time to anyone. And if we've created a meeting at 9 o'clock and I get on at 9:05, 9:10, it's really disrespectful to everyone in the room. I'll answer it differently. One of the first sessions we did at Performance by Design was a mate of mine's company. And, everyone got there on time except for him. And he walked in and I'm like, this is not great. And anyway, after we did a bit of an introduction, he said, look, can you give me a minute, Rudy? I said, yep, no worries. And he apologised straight away. He said, look, guys, I had to take the phone call. I should have been on time, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. You know what that did? It actually made our job easier at Performance by Design. It explained to everyone in the room why he was late, and then we just got on with the session. All right? That, to me, is more important, okay, than the person. Someone might turn up late. And if you've got a legitimate reason, tell everyone in the room. Don't leave it unsaid, because everyone's seen you walk in late, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's not like someone in the room missed it. But that, to me, was really groundbreaking. I've said that to my mate so many times. I've used that as an example. I said, mate, you know how powerful that was for you to get up in that moment and say, I apologise, it's not good enough, but I had to do this. And that is taking responsibility, but also saying, yes, being on time is really important, and I value that as the CEO. On this particular occasion, I couldn't make it, but I want to make it clear the reasons why I couldn't make it, and it's unacceptable. That's a really good way to look at that situation.
So if the meeting was due to start at 9 and he's late, did you start at 9?
Yeah, we started at 9. Yep, 100%. Yep. And the other thing is, if I'm late, I'll always text someone or I'll ring someone. Again, this is not necessarily everyone being there on time, but knowing that this is when the meeting's going to start. If you can't make it, let someone know.
Yeah.
All right? This is our culture code. This is our communication. But what happens, mate, is, as you said, most people don't even make an excuse. And then what happens? The next meeting starts another minute later. And then a week later, we start at 9:10. And then what happens is the week after that's 9:15. And before we know it, we start 9 o'clock meetings at 9:23. Because that's what we see culture erode over time.
Yeah.
All right. In that other instance I was saying, that next meeting is going to start at 9 and that boss is going to be there at 9 because he's made that really clear. That's what culture is about, action.
So you mentioned you did
that's what people don't understand.
You mentioned you did a conference recently in Fiji and they work on Fiji time. So how did you handle that?
Yeah, well, most of the participants from Australia and New Zealand. But again, I said this, not the one we just had recently, but the last one I had. You'll define your culture in such a short space of time. So our conferences are over 3 or 4 days. And I said this to on the first day of a conference in 2019. I said at the end of the day, we've already defined our culture, guys. What do you think part of our culture is? And you could see blank stares on the face. I said, well, what do you think it is? And one person put up their hand and said, we start our sessions late. I said, 100%. We have already established within half a day that our sessions are going to start late, haven't we? And that was in half a day at a conference. That's how quickly we can establish a culture.
Yeah, very good. So as far as teaching culture, and you were talking that you can teach behavioural to corporates and sporting clubs, what about kids and youth? Where do you start the culture build on them?
Yeah, well, my son runs a company called Prince to Kings, and I help with the leadership component. And that they're basically 14 to 22-year-olds, and we work on things like that. Yeah, what's your value set? And I've spoken to my boys about that a lot. You know, we do that. What are your habits? So I'm really, I love doing the work with young men in particular, because that's the business that he's in. And that was really brought out of his experience at school. I remember he said to me one day, Dad, he said, school doesn't teach you any life skills. And he's 100% right. We need to change the education system dramatically. And he said that. And then he came up with his business. I said, mate, that is awesome because of his experience. He had a good experience at school, but no one's teaching about, journaling or health or meditation or, things like that. And he has these really difficult conversations with these young men around, girls and drinking, et cetera, and I provide the leadership component. So the sooner someone can establish their brand, the better, because we live by values and we live by the fact that what do we value is what we do. And that as soon as we can establish our own personal brand, our own personal value set, the better we are. We need people with much, much better values at the moment.
You're good. The Swans were so lucky to have you, and Australia's lucky to have you and your accent. By golly, you're terrific. You're just terrific. I know Barnaby's got another question for you, but before we go, I want to keep you on the screen so that Barnaby and I can come across and get a selfie with you on the screen. Can we do that?
No problem.
Yeah, fabulous. All right, Barnaby, back to you. Thanks, mate.
Rosie, thank you. I'm actually going to have to wrap it up. I know you're a busy man, you've got things to do, but thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure talking to a legend of Australian sport who also knows a thing or two about business and culture. So thank you, Rosie, for joining us.
Thanks. Give us a smile.
Give us a smile. Scott's doing a selfie with you right now.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Rosie.
You are fabulous, Rosie. You are absolutely fabulous. I applaud you.
Yeah, good to chat. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks.
Take care.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.
See ya.
We'll see you in Hawaii next year.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, thanks, Paul Roos, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure shooting the breeze with you. And thank you to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor for the 6th year in a row. And thank you for listening. And we hope we've helped make you proud of just being a little bit better and a little bit prouder of being an everyday Joe or Joanne Bag of Donuts. Hey, you can listen to Everyday Greatness next week when we will continue today's conversation with Brendan Rogers, host of the Culture of Leadership podcast and keynote speaker, leadership coach and consultant. We'll be asking Brendan whether good culture or good leadership is more important in business. So we hope you can join us for that. And if you would, and you want to find out more about the show, then go to the Everyday Greatness page at barnabyhowarth.com.au, barnabyhowarth.com.au, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. But importantly, thank you for listening today. This is Scott Gibbons, Barnaby Howarth. We'll see you next time.